Good evening. Welcome on
Hey,
this May 3rd of 2012. That music you were listening to was one of the pieces by Kenneth Parent, who's an international musician. He'll be joining us next week on a live stream, so we hope that you all tune in for that. It's going to be exciting. He's an amazing artist, a blend of gospel to jazz, and an amazing person. And we're going to have him live with us. And tonight, you're getting for a real treat because our host, who's standing by to be introduced, is going to be interviewed tonight with his story. So here he is, David Ebel.
well, hello there. Good to see everybody. Praising, praising God that we made it to this point. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get to do tonight. Uh, it's been a unique life for me because I've lived had medical crisis 7 times that's it. He's going to go, and I'm still here. So because of all those dynamics, there was a point where I was sharing my testimony on radio and television probably 3 times a week, and now I seldom get to share it. So we built into the model of when we did this performance, we would bring in musicians. There would be a week that was too quiet, and then I would introduce Joel, and we introduced Joel a couple of weeks ago. So now Joel gets to interview me, so that you get to know who I am, and so I'm basically gonna say, Joel, take over. I have no questions you can't answer. But let's just see where we go.
Well, thank you, David. And I know a lot about David, and there's a lot of things I don't know about David. We've been close friends for several years now, and we'll talk about how we met and how that was put into place by God. But David has a really interesting story, and when I first met him, it was one of those stories that was almost unbelievable of what he had gone through and to wind up where he was at. So, David, I want to start with your background growing up. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, your life expectancy was
7
supposed to
years.
be minimum, and the things that you were diagnosed with, the challenges that you've had, just
Mhm.
would you share with our audience just that background that you have fought for all these years from the date of birth? Would you
Sure.
jump in with that?
Absolutely. Um, my mom and dad uh, married. My dad joined the Army Air Corps, which became the Air Force at the beginning of World War II, and so they ended up living on a military base, and they got pregnant, and then mom was on ice walking in the house and slipped on the ice and lost a 8 month long baby on the ice. Uh, Out of that came a lot of dynamics that my dad couldn't imagine, and my mom certainly wasn't going to volunteer because she was trying to start a new life, not live the old one more time. She was an orphan during the Depression. There was 7 kids, and mom died giving birth to one of them, and then we had that, and then along with having all that, we ended up with at the funeral for my sister died, who was 4 years old and had polio, and they only knew a week after they knew she had the sniffles. They brought her into the ER and brought everybody in and said, this is not what we thought it was. This is polio, and it's polio of the brain, and you have zero chance of recovery. So you need to get your act together because you're going to have a funeral in the next week.
Mm.
And you got a woman who was an orphan who finally has a family. She loses one baby, gets another one, then loses another baby, and then I am born and I have birth defects. But because of the brutal way that they handled my family after my sister died, uh, my mom and dad became angry at God because they couldn't understand. And the preacher basically said in the sermon at the funeral that the sins of the parents fall on the children. And the reason why my sister Anita died was because there was some kind of sin in the family. And so God was punishing them by killing their daughter.
Wasn't that a common theme decades ago in religion, that when things like that would happen, the religious leaders' response was exactly that response, that it was.
I think they call those people Pharisees.
And imagine the burden that put on not only your parents, but other parents during that time period of having that stigma and living with that for the rest of their lives, believing that they were the cause. But share with what your condition was.
Well, when they started to realize there was something really wrong, they would try to feed me, and they would have to grab me by the ankles and run down the hall because I was strangling. And so they finally figured out what it was, and it was a birth defect. That is, when you're a baby in the womb, you have a gland in there that keeps you from drowning. When they slap your butt and you take your first breath, the gland no longer has a need, and pretty quickly thereafter it just shrivels and dies. And when it happened, things weren't doing well at all. My mom saw the doctor coming in, and he said, "Come here a minute, I want to talk to you." And she grabbed him by the shirt and tie and said, "They told me that the reason why my daughter died is sin. I'm telling you, not warning you, telling you, if my son dies, you're dying. There's no question that this is life for life here." And she just let go, and he went flying across the room. And they discovered that I had some medical issues, but because of the vicious way my parents were treated during the funeral, my mom was in full denial that there was anything wrong with me, because if it did, based on the funeral, that would mean that my parents were terrible, horrible people doing innocent things. And so it became a real tough thing. And my mom had a nervous breakdown at the time of the baby's birth. And then she had another one when I was about 6. And
what was your medical condition? What was the diagnosis that finally?
Okay, I'll quickly go through this. When they finally figured it out, they discovered that I have birth defects in my spine, legs, feet, hips, and so everything from my toes all the way to the mid back. When people have sacroiliac problems, that's the area was all birth defects. So when you looked at me without X-rays, I looked healthy. When you looked at me through the X-rays, I was totally not healthy. And so when my mom grabbed the doctor said, "Okay, let me see what I can do." Came back and said, "Well, we've got an experiment. Is he going to die without it?" Pretty much. Then do it. Come on, stupid. Let's go. So they did the experiment. And a year later, it became illegal to do it to humans in any condition at any time, to do that experiment, because the side effects were severe birth defects, dwarfism, sterility, and 100% mortality by the age of 20.
Wow.
And that's what they discovered early. Then in 8th grade, I had to have foot surgery on both feet, because I was trying to take misshapen feet and jam them in normal people's shoes. And it deformed my feet even worse. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor showed my mom all the birth defects. And my mom just yelled at him and told him he was an idiot. But, you can't, that's not true. And the doctor just very graciously said, "Okay, anyhow, regardless of how he got this way, this isn't about you. This is me as a doctor and a Christian trying to explain to you what's going on with your son, regardless of blame, because this is not a blame issue." So she calmed down a notch, and it went okay, but my mom never completely recovered, and she went from we were all born with arthritis in our family. My uncles, my aunts, my grandparents, my great grandparents, everyone on both sides had arthritis. And all the nieces and nephews in my age group, they all got it. I mean, it was everywhere. And so it was kind of like we expected it. But when it happened to me, my mom just could not handle it. And I was 3 days from, the pain was so bad, I was 3 days from suicide for my 5th attempt.
Well, didn't you mention just a few moments ago that they had given you a life expectancy of only 7 years? Is that?
Yeah. And that was their optimistic guess.
And when was that made?
That was made when I was 5.
Oh my gosh.
And at 6, I started the arthritis began to be very demonstrative and not only clear, but I never had a day without pain from age 5 to age 20.
And then what happened? I mean, you lived with this condition.
And I went through school and I went to college on handicap money, and I was a year and a half in, and I was working full time, going to school full time, and I had a brother that was slight birth defects mentally, and so I ended up having to drive him to work at 4 a.m. and then sleep in the parking lot in Detroit in the winter till it was time for school. And a year and a half in, I had a nervous breakdown. I just could not. I was not able to take it on anymore.
And how old were you then?
I was 17. I graduated at 16 on August 28th. And September 2nd, I started college. So a year and a half later than that, life was just beyond screwed up. And one day I'd given up on everything, put money down on a gun to kill myself. And I was waiting for the last payment on the gun so I could finish it. And I met this girl, and she was nice, and she was pretty, and she was wholesome. She was desirable, but she wasn't flagrant. She wasn't looking to hook up. She was looking to fellowship with other people who love God. So she brought me to church, and I went because she was cute. I had no theology.
I have to ask, for people that are out there watching this that are guys like me, how many of us went to church because that's where all the cute girls were at? Raise your hands. So you're in good company, David.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that once I got there, I was drinking an average of a 5th of scotch a day while working.
Was this to help with the pain, with the physical and mental pain?
That in the absolute beating myself up because I couldn't do whatever everybody else did. I was the smallest kid in the school till 12th grade. B, had arthritis. I had all the pain dynamics, and I was just miserable. And
so
after
you were blaming yourself for all these things that were.
But see, blaming was the game that our family did to each other.
Oh, so you learned well.
Oh, my mom was a master at it. And I got to say, in all good faith, I had a wonderful mom for what she could bring to the table. It wasn't that she did it all right, but she did all she could. And by the time I graduated high school, my mom was a full-blown alcoholic and never stopped drinking till the day she died. She died of emphysema because she was a chain smoker. And so when I went to church that night, I was so high and drunk both at the same time, which were my coping mechanisms, that when they invited us to come to the front, if you need Jesus, the girl who brought me there was named Barb. And Barb heard me go, do I, don't I? I don't know what I want. I know I don't want to live like this. And she looked over to see who I was talking to, and there was no one there except me. And so the young man that was preaching was the youth pastor, and it was his last Wednesday. It was going to be the last chance for him to preach to his home congregation. So when he said, if you need Jesus, if you're ready for your life to change, raise your hand. And that's when I said, don't I don't know what I want. And suddenly he said, if you need this, come stand by me. So I looked at the people in the room who had made it very clear that my long hair and the wrong clothes and the wrong everything made me less than desirable to be in their congregation. I was not welcome, and they said it openly. So after we got done with the altar call, I stayed there and cried. I just cried because it was overwhelming. So much I didn't know, so much I didn't get. And all of a sudden, while I was kneeling there, I heard a voice. And I looked around, there was no one there, but it said, my son, I've called you with an everlasting love, and I've called you to preach my word. Knowing that I've never been in church at any theology, that scared the daylights out of me. I wasn't used to hearing voices. So I gave my life to Christ.
You'd almost in that situation be wondering if it was drugs and alcohol that was talking to you.
One of the thoughts I was hallucinating. Another one is I was cracking up irreparably. Another one was I was guilty as everything because that was, I couldn't fix it. So I went home and asked my mom and dad to sit on the couch. I wanted to talk to them. And I said, Mom, Dad, I just had something amazing happen to me. And my mom said, oh, really? Tell me. And I said, I went to church tonight. And she said, why? And I said, because I was desperate and this girl would bring me. So I went. And she said, so church helped you? I said, it's the only thing that has. And she looked at me and said, I wish you were a drunk, because that's better than being who you are now.
What a blow.
And I was the outcast for the rest of my adult life till after my parents were dead. So when I gave my life to Christ at 20, within the year, I found a beautiful girl who loved Jesus. And wherever we would go, preachers would walk up. I'll give you an example. I had gone out with her one time, and she invited me to be her guest at a Teen Challenge fundraising dinner, because she is a graduate of Teen Challenge. So I went because she was beautiful, like I'd never dated before, and she wanted me to come with her. And at that chapter in my life, I was expecting a car to hit me. I wasn't expecting a girl to say, come to dinner with me at church. So I went, and the first preacher walked up, was Asian. And he said, my son, you're called by God. You're anointed, and your wife to be is called by God. And she was called before you, and she's anointed. And God sees and is showing me to tell you that you're in the center of the palm of his hand, right there. And wherever God moves you, you're still there. You don't have to do this with muscles or brains. You do this by just trusting God, letting God be smart so you don't have to be. So
where did that lead you?
To the next dinner at the next Teen Challenge with another pastor who happened to be Black, and he said almost identically the same thing. So there was 5 preachers later, and everyone had said the same script, and I was beginning to be scared, because this was deeper than drowning. I mean, this was scary. And so finally, I told her I wanted to bring her to the coffee house at our church so she could meet my friends. And she came. And my friends who were mentoring me pulled me aside and said, David, this is way above your pay grade. There's no way she's going to marry you. Tony and I, are your mentors, we're not married. Why would God send a new guy with 3 months salvation, a gal that looks like she's out of a magazine someplace? You need to fall in love with Jesus and forget the girls. And I said, I'm not looking for the girls. I'm looking to live for Jesus, and I'm trying to figure out how. So I I went to church several times. And after those dinners, finally, I told her I was going to call her when I got home, and I did. And I was so overwhelmed with emotion, including the fact that she actually cared for me. And I lived a life of contingencies. If this, then that. And if I like a girl, she's going to tell me I remind her of her little brother. There was always a hand pushing. And when you're already the smallest kid and already been brutalized and victimized and all the other eyes, to have somebody walk up and say these things, it was just beyond I couldn't even figure it out. So
when did you
I called her.
When did you realize, though, that was divine power working?
I got the hint, but I still was like a toddler trying to figure out how to race. So I got on the phone with her, and I wanted to tell her that I liked her.
You liked her?
I was going for innocent, pure Christian respect and love. I wasn't looking for anything beyond that. So I'm talking to her, and all of a sudden I break down in tears, and I propose to her. And I'm crying so hard, my hair is soggy, the pillow is soggy, my shirt looks like I had someone dump a bucket of something on me. And she said, "Are you done?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay, let's start at the beginning. I don't care who you were. I care who you are." And I said, "I'm scared to say this because it usually runs the girls away. But I think God put us together and I'm supposed to love you." And she said, "You finally figured that out, huh?" So that was, I gave May 2nd of 73, I gave my life to Christ. And June 8th of 74, we were married.
Wow. And
I'm coming up to 49 years now.
And for those that have not met your wife, Diane, she is just an amazing person. And I could just picture her in that scenario with you in that last moment when she said, "I don't care who you were, I care, who you are now." What a testimony of your wife to have such vision and clarity given to her by God as to her mission and the changes that obviously brought in your life. Let's fast forward as we look at our clock here. You went from the street, if I'm correct, and somehow you wound up at the Salvation Army.
There's many years between those two. When I gave my life to Christ, I ended up doing kids ministry. That was the thing. I think I had a history in drama, and I came to church for a vacation Bible school, and saw the most horrendous performance for kids that you could do without getting arrested. It was not even awful. It gave awful an awful name. And so when I found out what they were doing, I said, "So you see in the ad that you're going to have a clown come. Who's the clown?" And she said, "Well, we flip a quarter and the one that loses has to be the clown." And I said, "How do you do it?" She said, "We take shoe polish and polish her face. And I take a lipstick and put a red mouth on me or on her. And at the end, after everybody wins their prizes, then we give away the prizes and send everybody home." And I said, "Okay, would it be helpful? I'm just offering. I'm new here, so I'm not trying to push anything, but would it be helpful if I dressed up as the clown?" "You're really going to do that? Why would you do that?" And I said, "Because I don't see it as awful. I see it as somebody could have done that for me when I was a little kid, and I would have had hope. I lived 21 years without hope. So if I could reach kids and help them find and distinguish that hope, then that would be worth any Billy Graham sermon or anything else, to know that somebody was right with God because I was faithful." So we started the kids program, and basically I joined a denomination that was replanting churches in the ghetto. And so I did 5.5 years of working full-time and ministering full-time.
Where was this?
Ghetto, Detroit.
In middle of Detroit. Oh yeah,
In
nothing
a
like
good
picking an
neighborhood.
easy location to start your ministry in, David.
Well, I came there to help out for a weekend and stayed 5.5 years. Once I got the clear understanding from God that you keep telling me you'll do anything for me, then go love my kids. That solved that. So
And then where'd you go from there?
I joined that denomination and served for almost 20 years. And during that, the denomination, which I don't usually say the name of, because if I can't be kind with words, I usually don't use them. But it was a Southern denomination with some cultural differences from how I saw and read in Scripture and how they did it. And if I had been someone's son or nephew, I would have been great. But because I was sort of just an add-on, it was not a convenient or comfortable situation. But once after that period of time, I had met so many people doing the kids ministry that I had a friend of mine who I had met while I was planting churches. This church was being planted in Chicago, and the guy that invited me to be his assistant staff chaplain at Cook County Jail. So while I was planting the church and all the other things, I ended up doing that. And then I didn't hear from the guy for a couple of years, and then he calls me and says, "You still doing kids work?" I said, "Yep." He said, "Well, the guy we always use out here in California now has got cancer and he can't come. So I've gotten permission from our headquarters to invite you to come and for you to do the work for 3 weeks." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to be blunt. Jim, you know me. I'm blunt. Am I going to pay my bills with this?" "Well, yeah." "Am I going to make enough money my kids can eat?" "Well, yeah." "Are they going to treat me welcomed, or are they going to look at me with disdain like the other group?" And they said, "No, you're good. And matter of fact, that's fine." So we flew out, did all three of us, Josh, my son, Diane, my wife, and I, flew out, and it did 2 weeks. And then we sent my wife home because there was still a daughter at home that needed some more family. And then so Josh and I, my son, we did the last week. And then the last day of the third week, this really short, effervescent guy comes in, and everybody's going, "Colonel's here, Colonel's here." And so I'm just waiting to figure out what that means. And he walks up and says, "So you're the clown guy?" And I said, "Well, the outfit kind of gives that away." And he laughed, and he said, "Okay, so we need to talk. The show's about to start in 15 minutes, and that's not enough time. So when we're done, can you hang around so I can meet with you?" "Sure." So we did it, and the total altar call combined for the 3 weeks was almost 300. That's a lot of people to come to the Lord who had no clue who he was. And so afterward, Colonel Harvey says, "Sit down here." And I said, "Okay." He says, "You are anointed like no one I've ever seen. And I don't play around. I believe that God has called you to help me reach this California area for the Lord. I want all of you. I don't want you to work a job. I don't want you to do anything else. I want you to spend your time as a father, a husband, and as an evangelist. And that's it." And I said, "Well, what else am I going to do?" And he said, "You're going to just learn how to relax. You're going to learn how to play with your kids. You're going to live without guilt." And all this is coming from a guy who doesn't know anything about me. But he just laid out what my plan was. So I said, "Okay." And I said, "I'm willing to go home and try it." And he said, "Go home, go straight home. You'll have I'll FedEx you a check, cash the check, rent the truck, load it up, and come to California from Chicago, where you're living now. And so we did everything we said, put the house on the market, sold the house for asking price in 3 days, sold the furniture in 1 day, sold the extra car in 1 day, and got in the truck and we drove from Wisconsin. We were finally in Wisconsin, so we moved from Wisconsin all the way to Modesto, California in 4 days. So when we got here, I was beyond tired. I couldn't even be funny. I was empty. But I knew I was at peace. That was the peace I needed. I needed to be at peace with God. So I gave my life to it, and became a soldier, which is what they call minister. If you're a church member that sold out, you're a soldier. If you're a pastor and you're ordained, you're an officer in God's army. And I became a captain. And then after a number of years, I became a major and in the Salvation Army, and served faithfully till October 31st of 2017. We were medically retired. And so we moved home, and God has used me consistently. We've ministered in 49 states and 20 countries. By each of the hosts where I went to minister, it was their obligation to count how many people got saved for real, because I don't know these people. And the guy who's there every week has a pretty good idea of who's serious and who's just going through the motions. And so at the end of every week, they would give me a written estimate of how many people they thought were changed by the week. And so when we tallied the years that we were in California and added up the souls from that period of time, it was between 9,000 and 12,000 people.
Now, let's dive in for a few minutes on
Go ahead.
What that was like at the Salvation Army as being a major with them. And if I stand correctly, your wife was too.
Well, the couple is ordained together, or they can't. Neither one can be. They ordain the couple, or they don't empower anybody.
So just give everybody, because I know I lived in your world during some of that time, when you were in San Diego, Escondido, and all of a sudden then you got relocated. What was that life like, where you literally picked up roots? And I think it was Barstow, was that correct?
Barstow was the final one.
And then when you retired, you wound up in Central California. But so I had been to your home several times. You and your wife, Diane, lived a very humble life, which just spilled over your character of both of you in your service to the Lord in the Salvation Army and the work that you did. What was that like?
Well, to be able to serve the Lord with the freedom to know I didn't have to worry about my next meal for the kids, that they trusted me to do what I was doing without having to perform. I could minister, but it wasn't show me. It was, we got the kids here, let's go. You're the pro, we'll help you. What do you want to do? And I'd done that for so many years and not had the freedom to do that. That the years in the Salvation Army were empowering, they were encouraging. Salvation Army is like any building with people in it. There's some good ones, there's some not so good ones, and there's some people who maybe started for the right reason, but something in life drawn just their experience, and they're not putting their heart into it. They're going through the motions, and that's just how it happens with people in church.
We see that a lot, don't we? And sadly, and of course, that gives people that want to criticize people of faith with ammunition, from everything from being called a hypocrite, because of those particular instances. And of course, they don't look at the big picture of all the positive work that was done. They look at the behaviors of a few people, and I think psychologically, we tend to focus on other people's misfortunes and showcase those, because then it makes us feel better about ourselves, that we hide our insufficiencies by pointing the finger. It's like getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar, and what's the first thing you say is, well, Johnny was doing it yesterday, right? They want to point the finger to take that spotlight off of them. But I've known you for quite a while, a couple of decades now, and I knew you when you were at the Salvation Army. And I can't explain, but maybe you can. You were one of the most humble men I've ever met. Did that come with the service with the Salvation Army? Did you, because of seeing other people that were in need? What were you always that humble man?
Well, but it depended who you talked to, whether I was humble or a know-it-all. I was always confident in the Lord. So the way I would perceive things and express things was not pity me or woe is me. It was, I have the privilege of standing here before you because God is amazing. So my job is to be I need to be the reflection of God through me, not in me. People need to see Jesus. They don't need to see David. David's right there. They get a pretty good opinion right away. And, it's not like you want them to. It's just like part of being human. But my goal from the day I got saved was I wanted to make sure that everyone who wanted to know God better had that opportunity. So realistically, even today, when we're done talking, if you want to talk about spiritual things in your life, my contact information is on my Facebook. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. That would be on my web page, davidwebel.com, where I show my pictures. I've become a internationally recognized Christian photographer, and won some awards. It's been nice. Didn't see it coming, but I'm grateful it did. But when you do the kind of work that we're called to do in Scripture, if we're doing it the way I read it in the book, I don't have to be it for you. I have to be it for Him. I live my life for an audience of one. Now, that doesn't mean that there are times that I'm more effervescent, and there are times I'm a little quieter. Well, that's, it depends how you feel. If your health isn't doing that good that day, you tend to be quiet. But my goal is to be transparent, loving, encouraging, and to be the kind of person that people say, I saw you and I watched you. How do you do that?
And we're all broken, obviously, in more than one ways. And you obviously have got your share of physical brokenness, so to speak.
Yeah.
What you just described, what I saw based upon what you've just shared with the audience, is your humbleness that I have seen from day one. And that equates to what I call being selfless as opposed to selfish. And I want to drive that point home to our audience, because that's not all who David Ebel is. Let's talk about the disaster training.
Okay. When we planted a church in Central California in a little town called Turlock. And when we were moved there, our leadership said, all I want you to do, you're off the road for 12 years. We want you to take it easy. So we're sending you to a little town so you can start the work, do what you can do. But I don't want to have you dying on us because you won't take it easy. Okay, thank you. So we started a Bible study in someone's dining room table. And to our amazement, instead of it going just at a nice even pace, we ended up with putting together a board and raising $6.5 million cash. For that $6.5 million, we also had people giving us bricks and mortar and all kinds of hands-on materials, so that when it was all said and done in 6 years, we had 28,000 square feet of usable space for ministry and opportunity. And then when it was all that was built, then there was money already raised so that they could put a chapel up separate, so that there would never be anyone thinking for a minute that we built this so I built a church. And because my thinking, and I believe most of the Salvation Army would agree with this, that we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for the people who are there now. So I am to do, during the period of time I'm assigned, everything I can to reflect Jesus, to love like Jesus, to forgive like Jesus, to comfort like Jesus, and to do it without recrimination, to do it without blame or shame, to do it because Jesus loves me so I can love them. And so that is the heart in all of it. Is it's not about me. So it's, it doesn't have to be about me. I don't need another plaque ever. I don't need another award ever. I've had plenty of those. Now in retirement, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with all that stuff. It was great at the time, but it's a different chapter now. But Diane and I, after 45 years full time, we retired, and we moved back to Turlock so we could retire there, because my daughter lives in Turlock now, and my oldest son lives almost an hour from there, and my youngest son lives in Ocean County, the old OC, down in Southern California on the ocean. Both boys are engineers, and my daughter is an esthetician with standing room only. There's no way her physical body would even allow her to do all of the bookings that people try to schedule. So we found our home. We're back with our friends. We live in a little mobile home that's just enough, and nothing opulent by any means, but I'm not looking for opulent.
I still want to circle back, because there's a point in your life. Again, I'm not going to let you off the hook on this, because
go ahead.
I'm going to make you talk about yourself, because you're a selfless man. You're not a selfish man. You were involved and became a trainer for disaster relief, for counseling. Share just a couple of minutes about what that was about.
So when we left Turlock, our next move was to Bakersfield. And the ministers that were there before me, 5 of them in a row got so medically ill they had to leave the work in a row, and so it left a less than desirable taste in the mouth of many people in the community, because they felt like we weren't doing our job. And so I came in, and my first job was to mend fences and to educate people to what we really do, not what they thought we did. And in the process, we discovered that the headquarters had bought us a canteen, which is basically a large delivery truck converted into a restaurant on wheels. And so I needed to be able to run it, to train people. So I went to get trained. And after the first 6 trainings, each one about 3 days, I began to teach it, and it grew and it grew. And by the time Joel and I got to know each other, I'm sure I'd trained over 500 people. But the goal wasn't, look at me. It was, look at Jesus. And by the way, I work for him. Got any questions? It was really, I had awards. So what? I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I didn't come for awards. So it's okay that they're not part of the topic. My dream was to reach as many people as I could and train them so they could duplicate what they learned from me and reach more people that are suffering. Suffering doesn't have to be a broken bone. It can be psychological. It can be all kinds of different ways people suffer. And so we trained people in critical incident stress management, which is an internationally embraced work that helps people who are facing severe crisis to stabilize them and to help them work through their crisis and get them onto the road toward recovery.
Amazing attribute and an amazing contribution. So now let's take another step forward. I'm taking that brush that I'm painting you with, David, and I'm making really broad strokes now, because you talked about people suffering. Mm-hmm. Now let's move forward a little bit further, and let's talk about your therapy dog.
Okay,
who's
that's
also
Bucky.
a service dog for you. So it wasn't enough that you needed a service dog. You co-trained that dog to do therapy work, which is going to, a service dog services you. They do something for you versus a therapy dog that you take to hospitals and things. And there's a specific story, and I hope that you'll be able to share where people can find that video at. When you talk about helping people that were in crisis and things, there's a video out there of a young girl.
Okay.
And I want you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm ready to tell you.
Let's hear that story, David.
Okay. I while we were in Escondido, I was trying to again be a chaplain for the fire department or police department. And for whatever collection of reasons politically, that's not how they saw me. They weren't interested in me doing those things. And I ran into a guy who was an advanced trainer in critical incident stress. And he trained me and brought me in as his number 2 chaplain for a very, very, very nice 12, 13 floor hospital just built. And while we were there, I ended up being there on the right day at the right time when a young lady just turning 20 was brought in and put in isolation. And I was brought in specifically because I understood this stuff. And this young lady somehow had been exposed to sepsis. So basically, you end up with an infection of your entire system. And it starts off being an infection and slowly turns into gangrene. So the only way to save the life is to amputate what is already damaged beyond repair. So this 20-year-old girl comes to the hospital, and they're planning for tomorrow, the next day, to cut her hands off at the wrist, both of them. This girl could be a model anywhere, any place, anytime, and her life just was horrid for now. So Bucky, my dog, and I came and saw her. Bucky is 100 pounds, and he was born sensing pain in other people. I got him at 8 months, and by 9 months, he was already demonstrating that he could sense people's pain so well that I brought in professional dog trainers and had the trainers train me and the dog to work with each other so that we would empower him and I would not hinder him. And in the process, once Bucky knew he could and had permission to, he got right in bed with her. After the surgery, she just had a big cotton surgery cover on this arm, and then both legs below the knee. And she had a big dog at home, and she just needed some comfort. And when other people brought dogs in, she didn't click with them, but Bucky and she clicked well. And the story is about what Bucky did and how he worked. And Bucky's 12 now, so he is now a little creaky old man, but he's still sweet, and he can still take me across a football field to somebody in pain.
Did that girl not contemplate suicide?
Help me. The one that had the
she
girl got with sick.
The amputations.
Yeah, she didn't really have a chance. She tried a little pity party, but her father was a Marine, tough Marine in charge. And so he came in and sat down with her, and she says, "I want to die." And he looked at her and said, "Okay, now I play Marine on you. Suck it up, Buttercup. This is not about you, it's not about me, about you. You are my daughter, and you'll get every support you can get. And you're going to be fine because I know who you are. Now, we got to do it the hard way and have a pity party? Or do you want me to bring your son in, who's 18 months old, to get in bed with you so he can stop missing his mommy?"
Where can people find that video, David?
If they go to Facebook to Bucky, Bucky, period, Wonder Dog, Bucky, period, wonderdog.com. Both videos, my story and Bucky's story, are there for your viewing and enjoyment.
I highly encourage people to watch that. It is one of the most motivating videos with that young girl. But again, this is about you tonight. And it just, again, demonstrates your selflessness. And I want to close tonight because, again, you consistently give. You're consistently a selfless man. And I look behind you at your amazing photography that you do, which once again is another gift that God's given to you that you share with people. And I want everyone to know that your pictures are not just photographs. They're pieces of inspiration that you can feel the Holy Spirit through you. As we wrap up tonight, David, what got you into the photography?
Being on the road for all those years was probably the big half. I'm trying to reduce me off the screen here. So the picture behind us that you just saw is an almond tree in full bloom. And I've had people tell me they can see angels in the picture.
I can
I
believe
didn't see any
that.
pictures. I don't see necessarily everything, but it's there. And so what we do is I create them because when I was on the road, I used pictures as a way of therapy for me when I was having a bad day. And then when we would go touring around, when we had a little free time, we would take pictures of where we were so we could document it. And when we finally left the road, I had fallen in love with photography enough that I wanted to start doing it seriously. And so we prayed, and ended up that when we were in Barstow, there was a retired pastor in the veterans home who Bucky got in bed with and fell in love with. And out of that experience, Bucky he was so amazing in everything he did. We just had so many experiences. I'm trying to think of which one to tell, but the pictures were captioned. They became captions of what God showed to me. I can't draw worth anything. I could probably write from 1 to 10, and with a little bit of work, you can read it. But that's about the depth of my art with my hands. But I could always see it. I just couldn't capture it until God allowed me to help this guy in Barstow, and he bought me a brand new camera. And then we had found the money toward retirement to buy the printer to print the pictures. So now I can not only take the pictures, but I can print pictures up to 13 by 19 here in my house.
And I want to comment because when you said you can't draw, but God gave you the gift of seeing His Spirit in your photographs, and I encourage everybody to go to your website, and I'm going to have you share that here in just a moment. But there are times where I'm having a rough time. I will go to your website and look at some of your artwork because it's more than just a picture of almonds. It's more than a picture of a beach. you can feel the Spirit. You can feel the Lord in your work. And I go there sometimes just to stare at one of your pictures and just be consumed by the beauty that God has revealed to you that only you see and only you're able to capture, that it actually gives me a calming effect. I know that you sell your artwork, and I encourage people to at least go out and look at it. Where can they find your artwork at, David?
On the website, David W Ebel, davidwebel.com.
And there they can view all your artwork. If they see something they like, they can obviously order it. You have it in different sizes, different framings and things that you can provide
anything
to them.
from 5x7 through 13x19 locally. If you want something bigger or on canvas or glass or metal, I have one of the highest classed photography studios in the world who takes my art and then puts it on canvas, puts it on glass, puts it on metal. So what you get is the most beautiful way it can be displayed. And I don't charge what my competition charges.
No, and I was just going to comment on that.
Yeah.
You're one of the most affordable artists out there. And by far, if you're looking for something that is faith-based and really shares the beauty of God, that he's given you the power and the skills to take those pictures. Again, I can't say this enough. Go, people that are out there watching this, go to David's website, look at his artwork. Again, it comes in a variety of different formats. If it's something that you're interested in and you want to purchase, depending upon your budget, that he's got different sizes and different formats. I'm plugging you here, David, because I think your artwork's just amazing. I've got one of his pieces that was given to me as a wedding gift, and we have it hanging over our mantle of Via Dolorosa. Is that correct, David?
Yes.
And that's the pathway that Christ carried his cross to his crucifixion. And it's just an amazing, and it's funny because we just bought a house less than a year ago, and we're remodeling right now and renovating. That picture was the first thing that got hung in our house, and this house was made for that picture, and that's the honest truth. I guarantee if you go out and look at David's artwork, you're going to find something that just speaks to you. And we didn't even pick that one. David gave that to us as a wedding present, but it speaks to us so loudly and looks so gorgeous in our home. Mm-hmm. And again, my point here is, I want to plug you, but I also want to point out the real gist here of how selfless and how sensitive of a man you are and how humble you are, that even when it comes to your photography, you're creating pieces to share with people, to show the beauty and the goodness of God. And believe me, people right now, we need that. We need that in today's society. We need some kind of comfort. We need the Lord in our lives. We need to have that place where we can go. I find it by going online and looking at your pictures, for that place that helps me take the ugliness of this world and find the beauty. And I get it through your artwork, David. Final words, David, before we wrap up tonight?
Well, I want to post a picture here. If you have questions later, or if you have questions for any of our guests, this is the email address for you to write us to ask questions. If you need advice, that's where you would reach out. Your email address also allows you a bonus. If you decide you are going to buy a picture from whatever way you buy it from me, I'm offering till the end of June that if you buy 2 pictures, any 2, the third one will be free.
Wow. I'm going shopping.
Well,
we got remodeling going on. There's going to be walls that need pictures, so
oh,
I'm going to take advantage of your offer, David.
well, I would love to. To me, the best gift you can give me is to allow me to share what I love with you.
Amazing story, David. For our listeners that are out there and our viewers, we take questions on this was a special night with interviewing David. Next week we have a special guest that David will be bringing on for you. We also take questions that we won't use your name, but we will share some of your questions, needs, concerns, and discuss them from a position of faith. And my job is to bring those forward to David, and then we enter into a discussion about things. We did one, what was it, a week or two ago, David, about cheating, and it was an amazing story, and we had great dialogue about it. So we encourage you, use that email that David should put up on the screen. Can you put that up there again, David, for them?
There you go.
picturethisadvice@gmail.com. If you have spiritual questions, if you have questions about faith, if you have any questions, David is the man to talk to. He's got years of experience doing this thing. He's a great confidant. I'm honored to be one of his friends and to help him with this project. So at any rate, David, I'm going to say goodnight to you. You can say goodnight to our guests.
That'll be wonderful. I'm grateful for all of you who have come. If you decide you're going to order pictures, email me the name of the picture that you're buying, and once they clear the computer and I see it, then I will ask you which one did you want, and I will send separately the third picture.
Great. Well, David, it's been a wonderful evening with you, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
And I look forward to everyone that's hearing us to bringing your friends and invite them to be here next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, so that we can share this amazing brother in the Lord. You know, I didn't open this site to be a religious site. I opened this as a site to help people, encourage people, to restore, renew, rebuild, whatever it takes, so that life is manageable. So that's why we're here. And if you're a person of faith, then we can be direct about that. If you, on the other hand, are not a person of faith at this point, there's plenty of pictures that I have no overt biblical words on them, so you can enjoy the beauty regardless of where your heart is on your faith. But we're here for you, and we wish you well. And Joel, thank you for leading us through this. And folks, thank you all for being here.
It's been an honor, David.
Yeah, God bless and good night.
Good night.